focusing on new business development, launching new products, solutions, and brands, and starting several new business units. A truly global citizen, Brian has lived in the US, Europe, Asia, and Australia. So please welcome him.
We're going to start with a quick video. I just saw this video this morning. I really liked it. So let's cue the video. It has nothing to do with my presentation, but it was just really cool. Go ahead, please.
So we designed an open source development platform that flies. And what we've done here is to take the human out of the loop, so it's flying autonomously using the Kinect. And our idea is then to use Bluemix, since it's also open and matches our philosophy, to control the position of the drone through the cloud. And it really saved us a lot of work when we got started. One of the reasons we're intending to use Bluemix is because of simplicity. We want to keep the amount of work we put into it as low as possible to get the highest possible gain out of it. I think I would recommend Bluemix because the ease of getting started pretty quickly and focusing on the problem at hand instead of focusing on the back end. The amount of work we put in it was pretty low compared to what we would have done otherwise.
Okay, so the three things I liked about that video, I saw it this morning. First of all is unmanned vehicles or assisted unmanned vehicles on manned aircraft are really cool. So I just think that's a lot of next 10 years are going to have a lot of interesting things, interesting developments around assisted driving, driverless vehicles, driverless aircraft, etc. So that's just a really interesting area for a lot of new solutions to come out. The second thing is the discussion around speed, right? If you heard what he was talking about in terms of the development project he's working on, is this notion of, and I'll talk a little bit about agile innovation, right? So it's no longer, that size that matters, right? Size and scales are important, but it's really speed is the core essence these days in terms of delivering innovation and being agile and flexible to be able to iterate quickly, right, and course correct quickly. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. And then the third one is around, he talked about core competence, right? What is your core competence? What is it that you're trying to do that differentiates your solution? And then how do you really utilize platform services, scalability, security? How do you utilize something else to solve a lot of those other, he called them back-end infrastructure problems, whatever. So again, you can get that speed. So I like the video. And I've got 20 minutes to talk to you today about the Internet of Things, and I put my title as From Hype to Insight. No question, the Internet of Things is getting a lot of press, a lot of hype out there in terms of what's happening with the Internet of Things, potential change across many industries, a lot of hype. And so I want to spend a minute today to talk about what's real, because there's a lot happening that's truly transformative and real solutions that are being implemented, so it's more than just hype. So next slide, let's talk a little bit of background on myself. I am what I call a product guy, right? I say it for 40 years, but you can see very much interested in things like, I call myself a Lego maniac, Hot Wheels, etc., but building things at a very small, young age. And I've had the privilege of working for IBM for almost 25 years, and a lot of the time I've spent with IBM is around this space of building smarter connected products, right? Whether it be working with wireless technologies or sensor-based technologies. Started off as an engineer. I've got a master's degree from MIT, and building handhelds and notebooks and smartphones, one of the first smartphones at IBM, home networking devices. And then I moved over into more of the solution space, working with wireless solutions and sensor solutions, building out things like Salesforce automation, Fieldforce automation. And then recently, in the last couple of years, working on smarter city solutions, launching our Smarter Cities business for IBM, launching a set of solutions around agile innovation, agile engineering, continuous engineering, and then most recently we just announced a new Internet of Things business unit. We announced that back in April this year, and I've been asked to lead the marketing team, so the CMO for that new business unit. So anybody who wants to connect with me, no, I don't carry business cards, so please don't ask. Just send me a LinkedIn invite, reach out to me, I'd love to, we can follow up after this. Next slide. So, IBM clearly has been watching this space, you know, not just through my career, I've done a lot of things in this area, but IBM, if you remember, started talking about something called Smarter Planet about 2008, right after the stock market crash. A lot of problems in the world, financial problems in the world, a lot of other problems around with infrastructure, financial markets, etc. And, you know, I started talking about the idea that the world was getting more instrumented, more interconnected, and more intelligent, right? And through these things, through these capabilities, we can improve the delivery of a lot of services, whether it be city services with intelligent water solutions, or transportation services with intelligent transportation, or improving the way food is developed with agricultural services. And you can see a lot of improvements happen in the last 8 years. But the world was a different place 8 years ago. I think back when I was doing, I was leading IBM's Sensor Solutions business, and, you know, no question we were focused on Internet of Things type solutions. I'll share one with you. I had the chance to work with Honda in Italy, not far from here, just outside of Rome, in their motorcycle plant, and was working with both the CIO, a guy called Nicola Moroni, and their plant manager, Angela Paletta. And what they were doing is they were trying to get better traceability on their motorcycles, right? One of the problems you have with any sort of vehicles is if you have a failing component, a braking system, tires, etc., and you have to recall one of the parts, one of the issues is knowing exactly which vehicle to recall. And in many cases, they recall thousands or tens of thousands of vehicles when only maybe 100 parts have a problem with them, right? So what we were doing back then was when the frame of the motorcycle was stamped with a VIN number, an identification number, we immediately put an active RFID tag on that frame, and as it went down the assembly line, we were able to associate precisely what is the engineering part level of every subassembly on that particular motorcycle. And so when the motorcycle shipped, we knew an exact traceability or exact pedigree, and so if they had a problem, we can recall the right device. Now the challenge back then was, these RFID tags were extremely expensive, over $100 a piece, so much so we had to actually remove it from the motorcycle at the end of the assembly line, and the whole reliability of connecting to sensors, the network was not reliable, so all our focus was on the instrumentation and the interconnection back then. Well, fast forward to 2015, next slide, the world has changed in the fact that the cost of instrumentation has gone down by several orders of magnitude, right? The cost of embedding sensors into anything, not just into phones and cars and planes and trains, but potentially the seats you're sitting in could have be instrumented, right? So that you could book the precise seat on the precise day whenever you want it for a particular lecture, etc. So the cost of instrumentation has come down. The pervasiveness of connectivity. All of us expect to be connected everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're where you are today. You expect your smartphone, your tablet, your device to be able to link and get access to information that you need, right? So those two parts of the instrumented interconnected problem have really been solved. And we've seen this explosion of devices, right? And, you know, there's many different figures out there. You know, people are estimating 10 billion, 15 billion devices connected to the internet today. Very quickly, by 2020, 30 billion devices, and soon hundreds of billions of devices. So it's going to be a very different world as everything, you know, physical, you have access to, right? It gets digitized and you can control it and manage it and start to drive a lot different outcomes. So next slide. So the world has not stood still, though, in terms of just better, lower cost, better connectivity. There's three fundamental technology forces that are also driving significant change and accelerating the adoption of Internet of Things. and those are really data and cloud and engagement, right? So first of all, this explosion of devices is creating a tremendous amount of data. An interesting fact on the amount of Internet of Things data generated is 90% of that data from those billions of devices is not captured today. So that means structured data, unstructured data, 90% of it nobody's looking at. And that could be audio data, video data, whatever. So that's one key fact. The second, more important key fact is 60% of that data loses its value within milliseconds. So the data is most relevant, at that instant in time, right? If you know something and you can analyze it and determine the next outcome, you want to be able to take action and drive a better outcome, right? So data is really becoming the new currency of the future in terms of how to drive competitive advantage. If you are able to capture and analyze this data and identify new insights and do something with it quicker than any of your competitors, you're going to drive better business performance for yourself. So data is kind of the currency of competing in the modern world. Back to the other one, cloud is just enabling all sorts of new business models, having access to that information. And then the last one is just engagement, whether it be through mobile devices. How you deliver value to customers has changed dramatically because of the level of access you have to your customers. So next slide. Okay, so back to Internet of Things and specifically what's happening with adoption of the Internet of Things. There's really 3 stages of adoption that we're seeing, and the first one is just improving operations. So if many of you are, I understand this is kind of an entrepreneurial session and you're looking at different applications, one of the most immediate ways you can drive value is just what I call asset utilization, operations optimization, right? That's the first thing. So if you're in any sort of asset-intensive industry, whether it be energy and utilities or whether it be transportation, and just knowing where those assets are in real time, identifying their condition, knowing their history, predicting what's going to happen to them, you can improve the overall performance and drive competitive advantage. So that's the first one. The second one, though, is around this notion of agile innovation, accelerating innovation, so new products and services, right? When I was started, I was an engineer 25 years ago at IBM, and we were developing a lot of these new devices. We would design products, and the way we would be able to validate how successful the products would be to do focus groups. But essentially, we have to survey some customers and get them to tell us what they like or dislike. Engineers and designers don't have to do that anymore. Now you have real-time access to your customers. You know exactly what they're doing with their products, right? You can, through social networks, understand what features and functions they like or dislike, and you can incorporate that into a continuous cycle of improvement, in your overall designs. And you can also extend from just selling products, to real selling specific services on those products. And then the last one is this disruptive thought. Internet of Things is very, very disruptive, right? It's enabling companies like Uber and Airbnb, people that can come into an industry and really change the business model and how value is delivered to customers, right? And clearly there's certain industries that are getting disrupted more than others, right? So transportation is one, electronics is another, insurance is another. But essentially all industries will be ultimately transformed by the Internet of Things, some more quickly than others. Okay, next slide. So there's been a number of different examples where IBM's worked with all the companies listed up here in terms of delivering additional value, whether it be in terms of asset management, engineering solutions, etc. See what time? I'm sorry. Let me just pick one example I want to highlight. I was actually just reviewing it yesterday. It's not on the slide. It's around a company called Cummins Engine. Has anybody heard of Cummins Cummins engines. So a couple people. Cummins makes these industrial engines for all sorts of fleets and transportation companies. If you see a picture of their website, the engines are always painted bright red. And interesting thing they've been doing is they entered a project with IBM last year where they started monitoring about 80 different parameters on engine performance using telematics, right? And feeding that back centrally and running analytics. So huge volume of data, first of all, using something called InfoSphere Streams. I think it was the biggest volume of data captured of any project we've ever done in terms of, and then doing real-time analysis on all of those engines while they're in the field. They've also got the geolocation information. And this is for their engines throughout the United States. And what they're doing is they're identifying condition problems and predicting when the engine's going to have a performance issue. And it's based on monitoring, temperature, humidity, weather, etc. And then what they will do is they will automatically schedule a service stop for that engine at the locations that's closest to the user, and then send an SMS, a text, and an email out. And that analysis happens within like minutes when they identify an engine performance issue. So that's kind of the asset monitoring, delivering better customer service. But they're taking that engine performance data and feeding that back into their next generation engines. And they're also changing the way they deliver their service to customers away from just selling engines or hours, but selling performance uptime, right? So that's Cummins engine. Next slide. So let's skip this one. Just talks about everything's getting connected to the cloud. So getting access to all of that data in the cloud allows you to build out all sorts of new cloud applications, right? And ultimately, to build a successful cloud application, you have to have very strong infrastructure. So in the case of the video, this is something those guys didn't worry about. They're using Bluemix, right, as their overall infrastructure that gives them the security and scalability that they wanted, as well as an innovation platform. Again, Bluemix gives them that platform to build out their applications on, and they can focus on more on the business solutions, whether it be around asset management solutions, whether it be around engineering solutions, whether it be around using analytics, etc. So, next slide. Okay, we've got a couple minutes left. I did want to spend some time on this slide. It's kind of a fun example that we did in the middle of last year. So, just a little bit of a background. Has anybody ever been to a high-speed boat race? One of these, the offshore high-speed boat race. Very interesting thing to watch, right? It's very exciting to be in the race, but to watch it. These boats are going 150, 170 miles an hour in the ocean with 5-foot swells. The races are primarily offshore, but you can imagine there's a lot of challenges in terms of driving one of these boats. So Nigel Hook's the president of Silver Power Boats that came to IBM and worked with IBM in building out this solution. But Nigel and his wife actually power the drive number 77 Lucas Oil boat you see here. And his wife steers the boat, but Nigel's the throttle man, right? So essentially, Nigel has to determine, given the condition of the surf, etc., what level of thrust to give the boat. But he's also the operations guy and has to be monitoring how the engine's performing, etc. So back to just racing in general, if you're a spectator on the beach, there could be somewhat limited participation in this type of sport because you can imagine you probably see the boats come by the course once every time they run a loop, and at that speed, even if they're a mile offshore, it's fairly quickly that they pass in front of you. So what Nigel wanted to do was he wanted to actually accomplish kind of all three of the objectives of the Internet of Things. A, he wanted to improve kind of asset optimization, in this case his racing boat. B, he wanted to improve the design of his boat. And C, he wanted to improve, just transform the race itself and how people experience the race. So he came to IBM and said, look, I've got a race coming up in 3 weeks, and I really want to change the way that I monitor the performance of my boat. I want to use telematics and send data back and I don't want to be the guy analyzing what's happening with engine performance during the race. I want to send that all back to my race crew that's sitting on the beach, and they can analyze all the parameters and decide, how we're doing, what issues we have. Now, in addition to just the performance of the boat itself, Nigel and his wife both wear biometric vests, right? These biometric vests can record, all sorts of indicators for them as well in terms of how they're holding up, and that can be fed back. But in addition to that, what they did is now that they had the precise data of where the boat is located, how fast it's going, the direction, all sorts of information on the boat's location, speed, etc., and orientation, they put that into a visual mapping application that showed a very realistic graphic representation of the boat on the course relative to any of its other competitors as well. And then also, you could see visually how they're performing, right, and where it's going. And not only did he feed that back to his race team, he could feed that back also to spectators through their smartphones and their connected devices. And so, a couple of things here. He used our Bluemix and our IBM's IoT Foundation to do the collect and connection of the sensors. He used IBM's analytics to run diagnostics on the engine performance as well. In terms of improvement in his racing, one of his last races in the fourth quarter last year, he came in second. In that race, he attributes a lot of that to the improved interaction with him and his race team. And in that particular race, I gather he had a problem with one of the alternators that his race team diagnosed before he realized it was a problem, and they changed the way the battery was routed on the boat during the race and still came in second. So kind of sort of the benefits of this implementation. A was the speed. B, it kind of gives him clearly competitive advantage in terms of the performance during the race, speed of developing the application, performance during the race, and then also really improving the overall sport in terms of how spectators interact. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so I want to conclude here just a couple of points. One, I mentioned that IBM, we just launched a new Internet of Things business unit. IBM's been focused on this space for a while in terms of talking about smarter cities and wireless solutions, etc. We basically think now's the right time for us to start building out industry-specific applications around the Internet of Things. We announced this $3 billion investment, and there's several new solutions we're coming out with. One is we started to talk about our Internet of Things cloud platform that's on Bluemix, a whole new set of Bluemix services. Partnerships, one of the key challenges around Internet of Things is security, and it's really establishing security all the way down to the silicon, right, all the way up through to the application. And so we've recently announced partnerships with companies like Texas Instruments, ARM, Intel, etc. Final slide. Okay, so that's 20-minute overview, a little bit of talking about IBM's perspective of Internet of Things. Again, if anybody wants, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Also, if you want to get some more information, recommend you go out to the IBM Bluemix site. There is a solution area called the Internet of Things solution area. You can get more information on the Silverhook example I showed, a video, or other case studies. But more importantly, you can quickly go out and see a bunch of recipes. And these are pre-built examples and artifacts that if you're building out IoT applications, you can grab and start to build out a specific solution you're interested in. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.